G'day guys, Adam Cogan here from SSW TV, and we are here at the Digital Workplace Conference, and I have grabbed the keynote speaker, Christian Buckley. How are you, Christian?
I'm doing great.
So, look, you've got a very successful company, you advise big companies. I'd love to step back and know your story, where it all began and how you got to your business now.
Sure, well, I've been interested in various aspects of collaboration technology going back into the early 90s. Grew up and worked for a number of years in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was very involved with the startup community there. Did graduate school, started a little company for 3.5 years, building something that later we ended up understanding was a social graph. We didn't know to call it that.
What did you call it then?
Well,
what did it do?
So it was, well, I mean, it's a longer story, and that's part of the reason why we never raised venture capital around it, but ended up selling the company to Rational Software back in 2001, because we built some actually useful technology. Not that aspect of it, no, they didn't. But neither did we exactly. But it was that idea that in a collaboration environment that you don't do things within a vacuum, meaning every artifact, every asset you create is tied to something, and you're slowly, if everything's connected, you're building this network of artifacts. What we were trying to do is then find patterns for reuse of those artifacts. So from a project management perspective, if you, for example, if the system came back and said, hey, your requirements for this project are a 75% match for this other finished product, can you leverage the assets that were created, then speed up delivery of your project? So that was this idea of building this web of connected assets, of artifacts, and was this kind of rudimentary social graph.
And then at that point, something must have changed in your history for you to end up speaking at this awesome conference. So you must have fallen into the SharePoint or Office 365 world.
I did. I was a few years later. I had learned about and written about, talked about with a number of different customers. SharePoint, did a deployment. Which is funny. I actually was trying to talk the customer out of deploying SharePoint. For what they needed to go and do, but I kind of caught the bug, and less than a year later I was working for Microsoft. And I was in a team called MMS, or Microsoft Managed Solutions. I don't know if you remember that team, which became BPOS, which was Business Productivity Online Services, which was the precursor to what is now Office 365. So when I joined, there was one customer using SharePoint Online, what is now SharePoint Online, and I had customer number 2. So that's, I've been involved since then, and I left and went to an ISV. We got acquired. I was at another ISV. They got acquired, and so I've been in the space as a chief evangelist or chief marketing officer for about 8 years now, and then involved with SharePoint for 4 or 5 years before that.
Awesome. So somebody from your team must have done that terrible deal with Telstra. Telstra and Microsoft did this deal that we got Office 365 in the early days via them. Yep. Anyway, that's all.
Are they still on it? Are they one of them?
No,
okay.
We're free now.
There's a longer story. I'd love to have the conversation about that.
But now you have your own company, and you help explain to technical companies how to essentially sell themselves to a technical audience. Tell us about it.
Yeah, definitely. So my company's called Collabtalk. I've actually had the name Collabtalk for a number of years. That I've done a number of community initiatives around that. Some people know it. I'd run a monthly tweet jam, which is huge, gets millions of impressions for each 1-hour event that I do each month on different topics. But Collabtalk is a technical marketing services and independent research company. So I did for example, I had Microsoft as a lead sponsor and about a dozen major ISVs and SIs in the Microsoft ecosystem that sponsored a study looking at hybrid SharePoint and really understanding what is the size of hybrid, just of SharePoint hybrid, and what's the opportunity there. And we looking at the size and scope of that, estimated about a $3.2 billion market size of just the hybrid components. So it's not tiny, but it is definitely growing in that space. So I do similar research projects for other companies, and then I also provide what I call fractional CMO services, where using my subject matter expertise in collaboration in the Microsoft ecosystem, go in and work with consulting companies and with software companies, primarily in the Microsoft ecosystem, but I've got a few companies that are customers that are outside.
And people would know those companies like AvePoint and
AvePoint's a major one. Colego is a customer, a bunch of SIs, and other, well, smaller ones, Canyon Software, B&R Business Solutions is another one, Convo, which is based out of Germany and Poland. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of great conversations with names that but find themselves struggling with marketing initiatives and really trying to get traction on their products and services. And
all right, so let's move on, because I was trying to ask you outside, but everybody was loud, and we've got you cornered here. With the way that companies communicate, I wanted to ask you earlier about communicating internally with the tools, and we'll get to the tools. But companies wanting to communicate externally, I guess they used to, in the old days, use a press release, and now they use social media. Can you tell me good and effective ways companies should be communicating externally? Well, and what they shouldn't be doing.
Look, I mean, I said it's the magic answer to all difficult questions, which is it depends, what you're trying to accomplish. But I mean, you have, the PR side of things. You have content.
Is that still relevant today?
It is. It's important for certain scenarios. Is it the one thing that you go and do? No, of course not.
But if you're not doing it, do it.
It is a strategy that I would recommend most, especially if you're a technology-based company, to definitely try to employ that. I think it's
Is that just a blog post these days? Like
No, it's not. I mean, there's much more that's behind that, and how it's written, how it's positioned, who it's sent to, the strategy, the timing of the release of that, the other artifacts, the things that you attach to that PR. All can have an impact on the effectiveness of that piece. And that's just one channel, one method for communicating with your potential audience. But you have content marketing, this inbound marketing capability, and so you have blogs and social and kind of all those different things. That's another strategy. Your product roadmap itself could be another strategy. More and more organizations are using video content. More organizations are recognizing that it's necessary to be active participants in community boards, to be out there on Reddit and participating. Not spamming it, but being there as trusted advisors, answering questions, participating, sometimes just listening. That could be a difficult thing for a company that wants to say, hey, we can do this, to not say anything about that and just understand, kind of absorb that, and then kind of earn the trust of the people from those communities, so that when they come over to it, be knowledgeable about, hey, yeah, we're aware of these trends, these issues, these questions, here's how we answer that. So
I'm surprised about that Reddit comment. Like, if you're talking about you have a technology tool for, say, intranets, or we're at an intranet style conference here, would you tell them to get on Reddit?
Not necessarily, no. Reddit, and now I'm going to get trolled here, but because Reddit is full of trolls, it is. I mean, it's for certain things. I just use that as an example of one place.
What about Quora?
I mean, again, that can be one place to go for that kind of, to answer questions about that. I think it can be a valuable tool. I was thinking of more like the Microsoft Tech community, so that site, that community asset, LinkedIn groups, participating in Facebook groups and communities. There are a number of others, especially in the Office 365 SharePoint world. You have like the Collab 365 environment. There are still Yammer communities out there with tens of thousands of people that you can still participate in, where there may be relevant dialogues happening around your intended product or service.
Okay, all right. So you've almost given me a headache. Tell them to go free and populate all these
be aware of
properties.
The ones that make sense.
How do I
for
work
you.
out what I got value from?
Well, because it's not just, like, you could go and consume all this information every day, and at the end of the day, there needs to be some kind of marketing attribution. There is some measurable benefit from those things, and that's where, marketing strategy starts to help for those customers. You need to have, as a company trying to get people's attention, there has to be some kind of call to action and some conversion activity. They need to fill out, at some point, come to a webinar, visit your website, download an ebook or a white paper, those different things. And so your interaction, you may identify, hey, there's all these conversations that are happening out there. these topics are relevant to our company, we have solutions that fit and help in those different areas, and then provide offers out in these areas. And you have to be careful how you do that. Especially, you don't go into Reddit and start pitching, hey, our product can solve this, come take a look at it. That will not work out. It will not work out. So you need to be careful how you engage with those. But again, if you're having a one-on-one with somebody and they see that your title is with this company and somebody says, hey, what do you do? It's like, well, this is what we do. It's like, hey, is your solution actually? So in the natural course of dialogue, that comes up. There's a difference between spamming, that push advertising, and building advocacy by building that level of trust. And that's what you're trying to do through those community things. And you'll get so much more value, measurable value, out of building advocates, these influencers out in these communities, than you would just pushing ads.
And most companies are making a mistake. Either they're not doing relevant stuff, or they're doing it too in your face. One of the first things we usually start with our clients is, you've got to give away free content. You've got to write an ebook and capture email addresses.
I think there's some, and you're exactly right. And look, for depending on what it is and who you are on the level of trust, I mean, there's a number of things that you can go and do more of that kind of thing, but you're exactly right. I think by default, this actually happened in the mid-90s. Seth Godin, marketing guru, wrote a book about permission marketing. And he went and sold his company, I think it was Yoyodyne, to Yahoo, made millions of dollars, and suddenly he's writing all these books. And of course, he really lucked out around that, but he's a smart guy. But he understood this, that you can't sell to someone so much, especially in the modern era, where the old marketing methods just don't work. You have to win them over and get their permission to market to them, to advertise, build that trust. And it has to be authentic, too. So you have companies that were going out there like, we're spending thousands of dollars per month writing blog posts, paying people to write this content. Why is this not working? It's because it's not authentic. So there's a balance, like, who is doing the writing? What are you sharing? What are your goals there? What are you trying to measure? I mean, all of these things, it might be different for your company than it is my company on the types of things that we go and do. But if you're brand new to it, looking to, like, how do we start measuring something? You can't measure something that's not moving forward. Get started by, come up with a template. Like, I love the whole hero content, a white paper or an ebook to start with, and then you have this derivative content that's based off of this. Like, I wrote this ebook that's 10 pages long. I wrote then 4 different blog posts that will meter out over time. Then there's social messages that promote all of this stuff that's metered out over time. Well, there's a template for releasing content around certain ideas. That hero content, which might be your primary message, your pitch, what you guys do, then you split that up, divide that up, and then all the social messages around that. And all of those things drive people towards that download, that conversion activity, signing up to download that. And there you'll start measuring. As you do multiples of those, you'll realize, hey, we just did 3, in the last 3 months, we did 3 different white papers. This second one is performing better. Why? Well, we hit a different subset of our market, or it was this other product that seems to be doing better. And then you start learning from that and adapting, or saying, hey, we did something different. This one had a different style on that same old content. Then let's go test that out. Do we modify the other 2 so that it's similar to the one that was successful? Do we see a change there? And you learn, you iterate on those things. There's a lot of complexity behind marketing. Right. And I know marketing people get beat up a lot about that kind of thing, but marketing is getting more and more technical. Awesome.
So the next question, I want to talk about, I know I could find out if I went to your session, which you're doing shortly, but too many good sessions, so I won't be there. You can tell us quickly. So how do you have companies communicate effectively internally? And how do they do it before we had portals?
Well, I mean, before portals, it was paper-based. It was, send memos and meetings. Email, right? Email before that, or I said, hey, go back there. It's like, well, send a telegraph to our other office. Yeah, but it was sitting in meetings. It was paper-based, people-based. So conversations, and it's kind of funny that here we went into this digital format where we're kind of removed the conversation, and now we're coming back around to the social where it's all about conversation again. We've learned a lot with all this technology over the years.
But we've had intranets for a while.
Right.
I guess we've had bad intranets.
Yep. that
what do
were
we have
really
now?
broadcast. I mean, a lot of those bad intranets were about broadcast of information. It was push marketing. It was, I'm broadcasting this information. There's no way for people to communicate back. And there were some better
they weren't
portals.
chat style.
Right. Well, yeah, it was essentially a billboard for
Right.
an organization, and they dumped documents in there, and you went to find certain information. It was usually, it's like the company newsletter. It's outdated as soon as you hit publish, you know. And so where organizations started being successful around portals when they started adding the social collaborations, the two-way communication. And so that's why you saw like the rapid rise and success of Yammer and of these other social capabilities. Why Microsoft, you know, initially went before they acquired Yammer and started building the social capability you know, inside of SharePoint, and why you have the rise and success of instant messaging. You look at the there's so many different tools that are out there that are just chat tools, which there's nothing that's really changed in the technology since it was released in the 90s, you know, but it's this conversation based, but more and more video as well as the chat,
right,
you know, side of things. And so there's no right answer for any team, because even within a team of 10 people, there might be different needs where sometimes an email is sufficient, or we want to have that persistent dialogue where I might use like an Outlook conversation, which I'm just not a fan of that capability, or like Yammer, or going and having a team, you know, Skype chat, or using now Microsoft Teams for that high velocity, with the phrase that's used, but it's again chat based, but right there on the fly. If we get to the point where, you know what, like there's too many things that are flying back and forth, hit open up for the live meeting of the video and start sharing that, and share your desktop. You know, it's different needs for different teams for different problems and communication styles.
Right. So clearly we're using lots of tools. You've mentioned Yammer and Teams and other things, but just the intranet itself. Where are we with that? Are you, like the new Office 365 portal seems nice. It's miles easier to edit content on it.
Right.
It's got some nice features. Where are we with that? Have we hit Nirvana yet?
Well, I don't know about Nirvana. It's getting very close to that. I mean, the whole question of the which tool do we use when is the wrong way to look at it. If you're there's a great book called Social Organization that kind of outlines it down to kind of 3 parts to successful communication and collaboration. At the top of that, you have the community. So what is the community we're trying to address? Is it the 2 of us that are working on a project or a problem together? That's a community. Is it our team of like all 20 of us with our manager? That's a community. Is it our business unit, or even our company of 5,000 people? Each of those are communities. Now, Adam, would you try to use the exact same communication tools that the 2 of us are using to collaborate on a project for all 5,000 employees? Probably not. It's going to be a different set of tools, you know, different, you know, scope around that. So understanding your community at that top level, that's the first piece. And then understanding, based on the size and scope of that community, what are the social tools that we need to communicate? What are the right things? You and I need to be real-time collaboration. Maybe Skype is the best thing, and email. That's how we're going to work where we are. I'm based in Salt Lake City. You're based here in Australia. And here's how we're communicating kind of asynchronously on that. Occasionally we jump on a meeting together when times, you know, work out. Somehow I'm always waking up in the middle of the night for you, though. Jumping on calls versus you working at my time. But then, you know.
But do you have any limit on this? Like, do you mind if I'm having business communications and internal communications on Messenger, which are outside? You know, I can store my own Trello when people are using.
I do have a lot of problems with that, where I have people that I work with, clients or my employees. I've got 4 employees in my little company that will ping me on Facebook Messenger and talk client stuff. And the problem with that is that there's no governance, there's no compliance, there's no history of that within that's related in context to the client deal. And so part of that is just understanding, hey, this is the wrong place to have this conversation. It's fine if we're just having a chat and it's more casual, or, you know, there's no need to kind of track this ongoing. If it's around a customer, I said, you know what, let's move this conversation over to the right place, which might be SharePoint. It might be in, like the way that I manage my company, Collabtalk, is through Teams.
Yes.
So I have channels set up for every one of my customers. So if we're talking about a customer, I want that conversation to be part of that history over in that channel within that team.
And what benefit do I get switching off Messenger, which I love talking to you on, to move to Teams? What benefit do I get?
Well, you as the person that I'm communicating with outside of, so today I can't include you in that team, so that is the appropriate channel for us to work
but that's
together.
Coming very soon.
But when external users are there, that if I'm pulling you in as an external consultant on that project, I'm going to do the same thing. If you reach out to me and say, hey Christian, we start talking about this customer, I'm going to say, you know what, Adam, sorry, let's go move this over and into the team so that we have that history. Because I understand.
Are you going to tell me so we can search this conversation later?
Correct. So it's because conversation is an artifact. Everything we discuss, the things that I share, you want them to be in context to the work that you're doing. So if the context for us to share is that customer, if we then go have this detailed conversation and discuss intellectual property, then that could be lost to that project, to that knowledge management system that I'm trying to track things as for my business. So I lose value by having that conversation about that IP outside of that system. But it doesn't mean that there should be that, one, I'm not going to stop you. Right, but it doesn't mean take away those other tools. It means that there needs to be some level of community management so that I recognize what this is and, hey, let's move this over to this conversation. And so then it becomes kind of a training thing. And I've done that with my employees where they'll reach out to me even within teams. They'll have a conversation about this customer, then they'll start be talking about a second customer on that same channel, that thread for customer A. And I'll say, hey, we need to jump over to this other place so that it's a matter of record. It's being stored there. And so they're getting that. I'm reminding them of that less and less. But that's that community management aspect, because I know that's the way that my company needs to work, because the value is having all of that information about each customer in one place. So I have that kind of single version of the truth. And then you ask about the future of the intranet, and because I'm using Teams as my interface, it is my intranet. However, I am storing content and activities for each of those customers through Teams into SharePoint. I'm also leveraging Yammer for external community pieces, where I actually, some of my customers, there's a community building component where I'm using Yammer, but I have it all in tabs in one view. So I go into any customer and I can have all these tabs across the screen. I have the conversation with my team, with the history, all of our files right there. I'm using a third-party solution for project management that's within this. That's another tab. And then I have all the SharePoint sites, the Yammer groups, kind of all those components. And I don't need to go think about how I pull these pieces together. That's the future, is that I have the ability to just go and create a new tab. I have all of the other rich services that are within Office 365 and just start using it, because the features are enabled for that team, which is all within that group's construct.
So Christian, I'd like to ask you one more question.
Sure.
I think I've understood you so far that you essentially have one system which is emails and the other is an intranet, and Teams you regard as part of the intranet. Would I be right?
I would, for my organization, it is the intranet, right. Correct.
So Teams is awesome. We've got lots of tabs as you discussed.
Mm-hmm.
We've got heaps of connectors to.
So you can connect into other line of business, right? Other line of business
Trello,
apps.
You could have Slack. You could have anything.
Yep, you could.
But what is the future with all these bots coming?
Well, the whole, you probably heard some of the language around conversation as a service and kind of that, and I think there's a whole other depth to what that actually means. But it's the idea of this is that it's kind of like using search as an example. Search works great if you know what it is that you're looking for. It's not a great discovery tool. It's more of content is or isn't in the system. It's been tagged or isn't tagged, and I've either used the right keywords to find it or I've not, and I will or won't find it. Where you start adding intelligence into the system is the system, and this is where the cloud comes into play and why you have like Dell, for example, improves on that. It says, you asked for this, but then you keep searching for other terms around this. I think you actually mean this other entirely different thing based on what I see other people looking for, based on the patterns of the usage that you have in the system. So you're starting to uncover content that you may not have otherwise known to ask for or known how to ask for it and retrieve it. Bots is like the next step there, where you actually have another way of interacting with your system and with the data so that you can use natural language to ask questions, to find information, for it to go and do tasks on your behalf. Like I use the Kayak bot, for example, to go and mention like you would. I could say like at Adam Cogan, and it would go and alert you like, hey, Christian's asking you a question, kind of thing.
But
Similar.
That's built in. Why do I need
right.
that?
So, but I'm saying the same thing that I can ask the bot then to go and do things for me, and I could say like the Kayak's like, hey, I need information on a flight from Sydney to Perth on Thursday. Go and find this information, and it'll go and retrieve and say, hey, I see 5 different flights that are leaving. Here are the prices. Here are the things. So we could go and do things on my behalf. Likewise, just based on the conversation, there's more and more intelligence that'll happen. So it says, it might even get very quickly to the point where, and you have some of this kind of capability even in Outlook, where it says, hey, I see that somebody asked you to do this task. Do you want me to add this task to your to-do list? And get to the point where it's not even asking, it just understands that it's a request for a task that's to you, Adam, and adds it to your to-do list, and then schedule it. Or that it knows to respond that you could say, that you're asking for something, Adam's already in a meeting at this time, and gets back and responds to the person intelligently, says, hey, they can't join the call now, they can't join this meeting, Adam's already in this other call. So bots is a way of streamlining, of automating that, of creating a simpler natural language way of interacting with your systems, your tools, all of these other apps. So you can ask more and more complex questions, even requests of the bot to go and look across Trello and SharePoint and your Outlook and to correlate things and come back with an answer. So, I mean, there's just a lot of exciting things that are becoming from that intelligence. And it's kind of like how touchscreens have changed the way that we interact with our devices, except for Apple devices.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's
had to do a slam there at the end. But yeah.
Well, it's been awesome talking to you, Christian. There's a real buzz around the conference, and I was trying to work out what it is.
Caffeine.
Yeah. I thought, if you notice, if you look at all the tracks, there's no IT Pro track anymore.
I didn't even realize that.
There's no IT Pro track. So people are talking more about the business problems, or it's because people are excited about that it's on the cloud, so we don't have to talk about all this provisioning stuff anymore. It's just how to use it, how to get better solutions in our company and things like that.
That's been needed all along. It's not just, it's great to talk about technology, love talking about tech, but if there's not a business application, then why are we talking about the technology in the first place?
All right, great talking to you.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. And this is Adam Cogan signing off for SSW TV.